The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor of my sister's new kitchen, and in that crystalline explosion, I watched $15,000 evaporate into shards of broken trust. Her face went white as the Carrara countertops she'd just installed with money she claimed she didn't have. "How did you—" she started, but I was already walking out, my heels crunching over glass and lies. That was yesterday. But to understand how we got here, you need to go back 3 months to the day my daughter turned 16 and my family forgot she existed. 3 months earlier, I stood in my kitchen in the Lakeview neighborhood of Chicago, frost patterns etching the windows as Lake Michigan wind rattled the old frame. I was piping pink frosting onto a homemade birthday cake, each rosette a small act of love for Emily. My phone sat silent on the counter. No calls, no texts. Not from my sister Michelle, not from my brother David, not from my mother. The clock ticked past noon, then 2, then 4. Emily kept glancing at her phone with that heartbreaking teenage hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd remember. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and butter, warm and comforting in contrast to the cold reality settling over us. I'd been baking since 6 in the morning, determined to make this day special, even if I was the only one who cared. 3 layers of strawberry cake with cream cheese frosting, Emily's favorite, since she was 5 years old. I'd even tracked down those little edible flowers she'd admired at a bakery last month, delicate purple pansies that cost more than I wanted to admit. Every time my phone buzzed, Emily's head would snap up from where she sat at the kitchen table, pretending to do homework. Each time, I'd check it with my heart in my throat, hoping to see a family name on the screen. Instead, it was work emails, spam calls, a notification that my electric bill was ready to view. Nothing that mattered. Nothing that would put that light back in my daughter's eyes. "Mom, it's okay," she said, her voice small. "They're probably just busy." But I saw it in her eyes. That flicker of hurt that no mother should have to witness, that metallic taste of other people's cruelty coating my tongue. The hum of the refrigerator filled the silence where birthday wishes should have been, and I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, not yet. Just the first hairline fracture in the foundation of what I'd always believed family meant. I watched her try to smile, try to be brave for me, and it broke something fundamental in my understanding of the world. At 16, she shouldn't have to protect my feelings. At 16, she should be spoiled and celebrated and made to feel like the center of the universe for one single day. Instead, she was making excuses for adults who couldn't be bothered to set a reminder on their phones. "Honey," I said, setting down the piping bag and walking over to her. I knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in mine. They were cold, trembling slightly. "You don't have to pretend it's okay. It's not okay. They should have remembered." Her eyes filled with tears, and that's when I saw it. Not just hurt, but resignation. Like she'd been expecting this. Like she'd already learned not to count on them. "When did you stop being surprised?" I asked quietly. She looked away, a tear sliding down her cheek. "Last year, when they forgot my recital." "You remember? You said they got stuck in traffic, but I saw Aunt Michelle's Instagram story. She was at a wine tasting in Naperville, nowhere near stuck in traffic." The words hit me like a physical blow. She'd known. For a year, she'd known they'd lied, and she'd watched me make excuses for them, watched me choose their comfort over acknowledging her pain. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "I should have said something. I should have—" "You always protect them," she said, not accusatory, just factual, sad. "You always make excuses. I used to think it was because they were more important than me. But then I realized it's because you're scared of losing them." Out of the mouths of babes, or in this case, out of the mouth of my too wise, too hurt 16-year-old daughter who'd been paying attention while I'd been in denial. I'd spent 47 years prioritizing family unity above everything else. My mother's voice echoed in my head constantly. "Blood is thicker than water, Clara. You don't turn your back on family." So I'd swallowed slights. I'd excused absences. I'd made peace with being the one who always called first, always hosted, always gave. My friends had started to drift away years ago, tired of hearing excuses for why I couldn't make their gatherings because I was hosting yet another family dinner that half my relatives wouldn't show up to anyway. The isolation had crept up slowly, like frost on a window. One declined invitation at a time until I looked around and realized I'd boxed myself into a corner of my own making. Just me, my daughter, and the deafening silence of a family that took and never thought to give back. I thought about my friend Sarah, who'd stopped calling 3 years ago after I'd canceled our monthly lunch date for the 5th time in a row. "I can't keep being the only one who makes an effort," she'd said. At the time, I'd been offended. Now, I understood. I'd been doing the same thing with my family, except I was the one making all the effort, and they weren't even pretending to try. That night, Emily blew out her candles alone except for me. 16 tiny flames reflecting in her eyes, each one a wish I knew wouldn't come true. "I wished they'd at least call," she whispered after. They didn't. We ate cake in the living room, watching her favorite movie, both of us pretending this was enough, both of us knowing it wasn't. Around 9 o'clock, I saw her check her phone one more time, that last desperate hope that someone would remember before midnight. When the clock struck 12 and her birthday officially ended, she set the phone down and didn't pick it up again. "Thank you for the cake, Mom," she said, hugging me tight. "It was perfect. You're always perfect." But I wasn't. I was complicit. I'd been enabling this treatment for years, teaching them through my silence that we would always be there to pick up the scraps of their attention whenever they deigned to throw them our way. I know you're screaming at your screen right now, telling me I should have cut them off years ago. But love isn't blind. It's paralyzed. It's the weight of 1,000 Christmas dinners and childhood memories pressing down on your chest until you can't remember how to breathe without them. The weeks after Emily's birthday passed in a blur of normal. I went to work at the law firm where I'd been a paralegal for 20 years. I came home. I helped Emily with college applications. I pretended the silence from my family didn't feel like drowning in plain sight. But everything had shifted. I found myself watching other families at the grocery store, seeing mothers and daughters shopping together, laughing over inside jokes. I'd see posts on social media of friends gathered for birthdays, celebrations, ordinary Tuesday dinners. Each image was a reminder of what we didn't have, what I'd convinced myself we didn't need. My colleague Jennifer noticed. "You okay, Clara?" she asked one afternoon when she caught me staring out the window instead of working on the brief in front of me. "Family stuff," I said, which was both true and completely inadequate. "The kind you want to talk about, or the kind you need to bury in chocolate?" I managed a smile. "The second one." She brought me a candy bar from the vending machine. It was a small gesture, meaningless really, but it made me want to cry. This woman who I saw 40 hours a week and barely knew outside of work had shown me more consideration than my own blood relatives had shown my daughter on her birthday. Then, on a Tuesday that started like any other, Michelle called. "Hey, sis." Her voice was bright, cheerful, as if she hadn't ghosted my daughter's birthday. "How are you? How's Emily?" The audacity tasted like copper in my mouth. I was standing in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd waited all day for her call 3 weeks ago, and she was acting like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't broken my daughter's heart through sheer negligence. "She's fine. Her birthday was nice." I couldn't keep the edge out of my voice. A pause. Then, "Oh my God, was that last month? I'm so sorry, Clara. Things have been crazy. You know how it is." I did know how it was. It was always crazy when Michelle needed something, never crazy enough to forget to ask for money, favors, free legal advice. But a niece's birthday? That could slip through the cracks. I wanted to scream at her. Wanted to ask how she could forget her only niece's 16th birthday, but never forgot to post on Facebook 3 times a day. Wanted to demand an explanation for how busy translated to "your daughter doesn't matter enough for a 30-second phone call." Instead, I said nothing. Years of conditioning had taught me that my anger wasn't acceptable, that expressing hurt would make me the problem, the difficult one, the sister who made mountains out of molehills. Actually, she continued, not missing a beat, that's kind of why I'm calling. I need a favor. Of course she did. The entitlement in that transition took my breath away. From, sorry I forgot your daughter exists, to give me something in under 10 seconds. It was a masterclass in manipulation. And I'd seen her do it 1,000 times before. But this time, I was paying attention. This time, I heard it for what it was. Tom and I are renovating the kitchen. The contractor found some structural issues, and we're short about $15,000. I know it's a lot, but we're family, and I promise we'll pay you back by Christmas. $15,000. The number hung in the air between us like a noose. I thought about Emily's face when the clock struck midnight on her birthday without a single family call. I thought about the college fund I'd been building, dollar by careful dollar, the one I'd been contributing to for 16 years while Michelle and Tom went on annual European vacations. I thought about every time I'd bent myself into a pretzel to accommodate their needs while mine went unmet. I'll think about it, I said, my voice flat. You're a lifesaver, Clara. I knew I could count on you. The phrase echoed in my head. I knew I could count on you. Not, thank you for considering it. Not, I understand if you can't. Just the assumption that, of course, I would give her whatever she wanted, because that's what I always did. She hung up before I could correct her assumption. I stood there holding the phone, watching my reflection in the darkening window. The woman staring back looked tired, used, invisible. When had I become this person? When had I agreed to be the family ATM, the reliable one, the one who could always be counted on to sacrifice herself? I thought about my bank account. The $15,000 she wanted so casually was more than half my emergency fund. It was money I'd saved by eating leftovers and shopping sales and saying no to things I wanted. It was security, carefully built over years of discipline, and she wanted it for a kitchen renovation she'd described as a fun project on Facebook last month. The anger that rose in me was unfamiliar and frightening. I'd spent so long suppressing it, redirecting it, convincing myself I was being unreasonable. But standing there in my kitchen, thinking about my daughter's tears and my sister's entitlement, I let myself feel it, really feel it. And it was clarifying. That weekend, the neighborhood held its annual spring potluck in the community center on Clark Street. I almost didn't go. The thought of making small talk while my insides churned with resentment felt impossible. But Emily convinced me. You never go anywhere anymore, Mom? Please? She was right. I didn't go anywhere. My social life had shrunk to work and home, with occasional family obligations that left me feeling drained rather than connected. When had I become so small? When had my world contracted to the point where a neighborhood potluck felt like a major expedition? So I went, carrying my famous 7-layer dip and a smile I didn't feel. The community center smelled like casseroles and coffee, warm and welcoming in a way my family gatherings never were. People called out greetings, genuinely happy to see me. Mrs. Patterson from 3 doors down hugged me and told me she'd missed me at the last potluck. Gerald from the corner unit asked about Emily's college plans and actually listened to my answer instead of waiting for his turn to talk. These were people I'd been living near for 15 years, and I barely knew them. I'd been so busy trying to maintain relationships with family members who didn't value me that I'd neglected to build connections with people who actually seemed to care. That's where it happened, where the careful facade I'd been maintaining finally shattered. I was standing by the dessert table with Susan Kowalski, a neighbor I'd known for 15 years, when she casually mentioned, "By the way, your family throws the most amazing parties. We drove past your sister's house last weekend, and it looked like quite the celebration." My blood turned to ice water in my veins. Last weekend? Yeah, Saturday night. Cars everywhere, catering van in the driveway. Must have been a special occasion. She smiled, oblivious to the bomb she'd just dropped. I almost stopped to say hi, but I didn't want to crash a private party. Looked pretty fancy. Saturday, the day after Michelle had called crying poverty, begging for $15,000. The day she'd claimed they were broke, stressed, desperate. There had been a party, a catered party, with cars everywhere. The room tilted. I actually had to put my hand on the table to steady myself. Susan kept talking, something about the beautiful flowers she'd seen being delivered, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. All I could hear was the rushing of blood in my ears, the pounding of my heart, the shattering of the last illusion I'd been clinging to. She'd lied. Blatantly, deliberately lied. And not just a small lie, a lie of omission. This was an active deception, asking for money she didn't need while throwing parties I wasn't invited to. The cruelty was breathtaking in its completeness. "Clara? Are you okay? You look pale." I don't remember what I said to Susan. Something polite and hollow while the world tilted sideways. I went home and couldn't look at myself in the mirror, not because of what they'd done, but because of who I'd let myself become. That reflection showed a woman who'd sacrificed her dignity on the altar of family obligation so many times she'd forgotten what self-respect felt like. I spent that night on the internet, falling down a rabbit hole of articles about family dynamics and manipulation. Studies show that 48% of people who leave toxic family situations face online harassment afterward. The fear of what comes next can be more paralyzing than the situation itself. But sometimes you reach a point where staying hurts more than leaving ever could. I read about narcissistic family systems, about golden children and scapegoats, about trauma bonds and learned helplessness. Every article felt like it had been written about my family, about me. The validation was overwhelming and devastating in equal measure. Around midnight, Emily found me at the kitchen table, my laptop surrounded by tissues and cold tea. "Mom?" She sat down across from me, her face worried. "What's wrong?" That night, sitting in my kitchen with Emily, I finally broke, not into tears, into truth. "Grandma and Aunt Michelle forgot your birthday," I said quietly, "and now Michelle wants $15,000. Emily's hand covered mine. At 16, she already understood what had taken me decades to see. "You're not going to give it to her, are you?" "No," I said. And in that single syllable, I felt the first crack of light break through years of darkness. "No, I'm not." Her smile was small but genuine. "Good. You deserve better, Mom. We both do." But saying no wasn't enough. Not after a lifetime of being used. Not after watching my daughter's heart break. I needed them to understand the depth of their cruelty. I needed witnesses. I needed justice. And I needed to know the truth. All of it. No more lies, no more excuses, no more gaslighting. I needed to see the full picture of what I'd been excusing for years. Chapter 2 opened with me doing something I'd never done before. I reached out to my granddaughter, Jessica, Michelle's daughter. At 22, Jess had always been perceptive, watching family dynamics with sharp eyes that missed nothing. We met for coffee at a small place in Wicker Park, the kind with exposed brick and baristas who took their art too seriously. The coffee shop was crowded, filled with laptop-wielding freelancers and students. I arrived early, ordered a green tea I had no intention of drinking, and chose a table in the back corner. Privacy mattered for this conversation. I needed to know if I was crazy, if I was making something out of nothing, or if the truth was as bad as I suspected. When Jess walked in, I was struck by how much she'd grown. Not physically, I'd seen her at Christmas, but in the way she carried herself. Confident, self-assured, everything I wished I'd been at 22. Everything I wished I'd taught her mother to be before Michelle learned that manipulation was easier than authenticity. "Grandma Clara," she said, hugging me tight. "I'm so sorry about Emily's birthday. I wanted to send something, but Mom said you guys were probably too busy." The lie was so casual, so practiced. Michelle had actively prevented her own daughter from acknowledging her cousin. The manipulation went deeper than I'd imagined, layers upon layers of deception designed to isolate me even from the family members who might have cared. "Jess, I need to ask you something, And I need you to be honest with me. Did your parents have a party last Saturday? Her face fell. The color drained from her cheeks, and I knew. Before she said a word, I knew. You know about that. Tell me everything. She glanced around, as if checking for eavesdroppers, then leaned forward. Grandma, I've been wanting to talk to you about this, but I didn't know how. I didn't know if it was my place. It's your place, I said firmly. We're family. Real family doesn't keep secrets to protect lies. And she did. The party had been a celebration of Michelle's promotion at work. A promotion that came with a $20,000 raise. Tom had hired a caterer, rented a chocolate fountain, hired a bartender. They'd invited everyone. Extended family, co-workers, neighbors, everyone except me and Emily. There were probably 50 people there, Jess said quietly. Dad was showing off the new kitchen, talking about how they'd gotten such a good deal from the contractor. Mom was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, designer, probably cost more than my rent. And the whole time, I kept thinking about Emily and wondering why you weren't there. What did your mother say when you asked? I asked Mom why you weren't there, Jess said quietly. She said you were upset with her about something petty and wouldn't come. I should have known that wasn't true. You're never petty, Grandma. You're the least petty person I know. You're the one who always tries to smooth things over, who always makes excuses for everyone else. The pain in her voice told me she'd been struggling with this too. Michelle's lies hadn't just hurt me. They'd forced her own daughter into complicity, made her doubt her own perceptions. Has she done this before? I asked. Lied about me? Jess bit her lip, warring with herself. Loyalty to her mother versus loyalty to truth. I watched the struggle play out across her face, and I felt guilty for putting her in this position. But I needed to know. Yes, she whispered finally. All the time. Little things, usually. She'd say you were too busy to come to dinner when she never invited you. She'd say you didn't like certain people when I don't think you'd ever met them. She'd tell Dad you'd said things you hadn't said, then get mad at you when you didn't remember saying them. Have you ever felt your entire understanding of reality shift? That's what gaslighting does. It makes you doubt your own sanity, question your own memories. For years, I'd been told I was too sensitive, too demanding, that I expected too much from family. Now, sitting across from my granddaughter, I realized every accusation had been a deflection. Every time I'd felt hurt, I'd been told the hurt was my fault. The claustrophobia of that realization made the cafe walls feel like they were closing in. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The espresso machine hissed like a snake, and I wanted to run. Grandma? Jess's hand on my arm anchored me. Are you okay? She asked me for $15,000, I heard myself say. She said they were broke from the renovation. Jess's eyes widened. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. The renovation that's already paid for? The one Dad's been bragging about getting such a good deal on? There it was. The smoking gun hadn't arrived yet, but I could smell the powder burning. How do you know it's paid for? I asked, even though I could feel the answer coming, heavy and inevitable. Because Dad told everyone at the party. He was half drunk, showing people the kitchen, talking about how they'd gotten a $75,000 loan approved in one day because of Mom's new position. He said they had money left over, that they were thinking about redoing the master bathroom next. $75,000, already approved, already funded. The renovation was paid for, with money to spare, and Michelle had asked me for $15,000 more. I must have looked devastated because Jess squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I should have told you sooner. I didn't want to cause drama. You didn't cause anything, I said firmly. Your mother did. You're just telling me the truth. We sat there for a while, my tea going cold, her latte untouched. Around us, life went on. People typed on laptops, chatted with friends, laughed at jokes. Normal life, continuing as if my world hadn't just fractured into 1,000 pieces. I watched a young couple at the next table, sharing a pastry, laughing at something on her phone. They looked so light, so unburdened. When was the last time I'd felt that way? When was the last time I'd laughed without the weight of family obligation pressing down on my chest? "Grandma," Jess said softly, "I need to tell you something else, something I've been carrying for a long time." I looked at her, seeing the tears pooling in her eyes. "What is it, sweetheart?" "When I was applying for colleges, I asked Mom if you could help me with my essays. You're so good at that stuff, you know? You've been a paralegal forever. You know how to write, how to make things sound right. And she said—" Jess's voice broke. "She said you were too busy, that you didn't have time for me. But then I found out you'd asked her if I needed any help. You'd reached out, and she never told me." The revelation hit me like a punch to the stomach. Another lie, another manipulation, another relationship Michelle had interfered with, another connection she deliberately sabotaged. "I'm so sorry," I whispered. "I would have helped you. I wanted to help you. I didn't know you needed me." "I know that now," Jess said, wiping her eyes. "But back then, I believed her. I thought you didn't care. I'm sorry I didn't reach out to you directly. She's my mom, you know? I believed her when she said you were too busy with your own life to care about mine." How many other relationships had Michelle poisoned? How many other moments of connection had she stolen from me? From Emily? From Jess? The scope of her manipulation was staggering, years and years of small lies building into a wall between me and everyone I might have loved. "What are you going to do?" Jess asked finally. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I'm done pretending. I'm done making excuses, and I'm done protecting people who only hurt me." "Good," Jess said firmly. "Because you deserve so much better than this. You and Emily both do." We stayed for another hour, swapping stories, comparing notes, piecing together the full picture of Michelle's deceptions. With each revelation, I felt lighter and heavier at once. Lighter because I wasn't crazy, wasn't imagining things, wasn't the problem. Heavier because the betrayal went so much deeper than I'd realized. Over the next week, I did something that felt foreign and necessary. I started investigating my own family. I didn't hire a private investigator. I couldn't afford that, but I had something better. I had decades of paralegal experience and a burning need to know the truth. I started with social media, which Michelle had always been careless with. Her privacy settings were a joke. Within an hour, I'd found photos from the party. Michelle in a new designer dress, Tom showing off the renovated kitchen that was supposedly incomplete, relatives I recognized toasting with champagne that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Each photo was a small knife to the heart. Uncle Robert, who'd also forgotten Emily's birthday, laughing with a champagne flute in his hand. My mother, who'd raised me to value family above all else, smiling at a party I'd been deliberately excluded from. Cousin Rachel, who I'd thought was my friend, dressed to the nines and clearly having a wonderful time. The comments were enlightening. "Best party ever. So glad you finally got that promotion. The kitchen looks amazing, worth every penny. Can't believe you pulled this off so fast. Not broke, not struggling, not even close." I took screenshots of everything, saved them to a folder I titled Evidence, because that's what it was. Every photo, every comment, every piece of the lie Michelle had constructed. But I needed more. I needed undeniable proof. Something she couldn't talk her way out of, couldn't gaslight me into doubting. That's when I remembered. Michelle had asked me to notarize some documents for her renovation loan 6 months ago. As a paralegal, I was a notary public. She'd needed my stamp on paperwork from her bank. I'd done it without question, because that's what family does, right? I still had copies in my files at work. I pulled them out during my lunch break, hands shaking as I read through the loan terms. The renovation loan had been for $75,000. Approved, funded, complete. The kitchen renovation was fully paid for, plus enough left over for new furniture and landscaping. The documents didn't lie. The numbers didn't lie. The dates didn't lie. 6 months ago, Michelle had received $75,000 specifically for renovations. There was no contractor finding additional problems. There was no financial shortfall. There was just greed, dressed up as need, presented to the family member she thought would be too stupid or too conditioned to say no. She didn't need my $15,000 for the renovation. She just wanted it. For what? More parties? A vacation? It didn't matter. What mattered was the lie, bold and documented. I made copies. I highlighted the relevant sections. I built my case like I'd been trained to do, one piece of evidence at a time. Each page I added to my folder felt like armor, protection against the gaslighting I knew would come when I finally confronted her. A betrayal this deep doesn't heal. It scars over, leaving rough tissue where trust used to be. At home that night, Emily found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, bank documents, printed screenshots, a legal pad where I'd been making notes in the careful handwriting I'd perfected over 20 years of paralegal work. "Mom, what are you doing?" "Building a case," I said. "Your aunt thinks I'm stupid. She thinks I'll just hand over $15,000 because family is supposed to help family. She forgot that respect is supposed to go both ways." Emily sat down across from me, her young face serious. She picked up one of the photos I'd printed, Michelle toasting with champagne, her smile wide and genuine in a way it never was with me. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who they are." "Will that make you feel better?" The question stopped me. Would it? Or was I just replacing one form of pain with another, swapping the ache of being used for the hollow victory of revenge? "I don't know if it'll make me feel better," I said honestly. "But it'll make me feel honest. And right now, I need honesty more than I need comfort." But first, I had to play my part. I had to pretend everything was normal while I set the stage. The next Sunday, Michelle called again. "Hey, sis, have you thought about the loan? The contractor is really pressuring us." I forced warmth into my voice, each word carefully calibrated to sound normal. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about that. Can we meet for lunch this week? Maybe Wednesday?" "Oh, sure. That works. Should we go to that Italian place you like?" She said it like she was doing me a favor, choosing the restaurant I preferred. Never mind that she'd be eating there on my dime, as she assumed she'd be getting my money. The presumption in her voice made my jaw clench, but I kept my tone light. Perfect. My treat. "You're the best, Clara. I'll see you Wednesday at noon." I hung up and felt nothing. No anxiety, no guilt, just cold, calculated determination. If you've ever reached the point where you stop feeling and start planning, you know it's both terrifying and liberating. You've crossed a threshold you can't uncross. The days before Wednesday moved in slow motion. I went to work, filed briefs, answered phones, and thought about nothing but the confrontation to come. I rehearsed conversations in my head, anticipated her deflections, prepared for her tears. Because there would be tears. Michelle always cried when she was caught, turning her guilt into my cruelty, her lies into my overreaction. On Monday night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario. What if she denied everything? What if she turned it around on me somehow, made me look like the villain? What if the family believed her over me, the way they always had? I got up around 2 a.m. and made chamomile tea I didn't drink, sat at the kitchen table with my evidence folder, double-checking everything. The bank documents were solid, the photos were time-stamped, the timeline was irrefutable. But I knew from 20 years of legal work that facts didn't always matter as much as they should. Emotions could override evidence. Family loyalty could blind people to truth. Emily found me there at dawn, still in my pajamas, my tea cold and untouched. "You're going to be okay, Mom," she said, putting her arms around me from behind. "No matter what happens with Aunt Michelle, you're going to be okay. We're going to be okay." I held her hands, these young hands that had learned too early how to comfort a mother who should have been protecting her. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see what was happening. I'm sorry I let them hurt you. You're seeing it now," she said simply. "That's what matters." Tuesday at work was torture. Every phone call felt like an interruption from my real thoughts. Every legal document I reviewed reminded me of the loan papers in my briefcase, the evidence that would blow my family apart tomorrow. My colleague Jennifer noticed me staring blankly at my computer screen around 3 o'clock. "Okay, that's it," she said, wheeling her chair over to my desk. "You've been somewhere else all week. What's going on?" I'd never told her about my family problems. I'd kept that part of my life carefully compartmentalized, the way I'd learned to do years ago when maintaining the illusion of family harmony became more important than honesty. But something in her genuine concern broke through my defenses. "I'm confronting my sister tomorrow," I said quietly. "She asked me for $15,000 she doesn't need, and I'm going to call her out on it, with evidence." Jennifer's eyebrows shot up. "15,000? That's not, 'Hey, can you spot me 20 for lunch money?' That's serious." She lied about needing it. She threw a huge party the day after asking me for money, and she forgot my daughter's birthday completely. Not just forgot, deliberately excluded us from family events while telling people we were being petty. The words tumbled out, months of hurt and anger condensed into a few sentences. Jennifer listened, her expression shifting from surprise to outrage to something like respect. "You're doing this in person, confronting her face to face?" I nodded. "Tomorrow. Lunch. Public place, so she can't make too much of a scene." "Good for you," Jennifer said firmly. "I know that took guts to plan. Most people would just ghost the sister and be done with it." "I thought about that," I admitted. "But she needs to know I see her. I see what she's doing, what she's been doing for years. And other people need to know too, so she can't keep doing this to anyone else." "You're braver than you think, Clara," Jennifer said. "And for what it's worth, I'm in your corner." Those words meant more than she could know. I'd spent so long isolated, so long without anyone truly in my corner, that even this small show of support from a work colleague felt profound. But this time, I had evidence. This time, I was ready. Wednesday arrived wrapped in spring rain, the kind that makes Chicago streets smell like wet concrete and forgotten winters. I met Michelle at Giordano's in the Loop, arriving early to secure a booth in the back. Private enough for confession, public enough that she couldn't make a scene. I ordered water and sat with my folder of evidence on the seat beside me, hidden but accessible. My heart was pounding, adrenaline making my hands shake slightly. I clasped them together on the table, forcing myself to appear calm. She breezed in 15 minutes late, designer purse on her arm, new highlights in her hair. Money she didn't have, apparently. She was wearing the dress from the party photos, the one that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. "Clara!" She hugged me, and I let her, feeling the expensive fabric of her jacket against my cheek. "You look tired. Are you sleeping okay?" Always the subtle digs, always the undermining disguised as concern. But this time, I heard it for what it was. Not a loving sister worried about my well-being, but a manipulator establishing dominance, reminding me that I looked less than, was less than, would always be less than. "I'm fine," I said, smiling. "Just busy. You know how it is." "Oh, I definitely know. Things have been absolutely insane for us. The renovation drama, work stress, you wouldn't believe the pressure I've been under." The irony was breathtaking. She was stressed. She was under pressure. Never mind that she'd just gotten a $20,000 raise and thrown a party that cost more than I made in a month. Her problems always had to be the biggest, her suffering always the most severe. We ordered. She got the lobster ravioli, $28. I got soup. While we waited for food, she launched into the renovation saga again, embellishing the story with new details about contractor incompetence and unexpected expenses. The lies flowed so smoothly, so naturally, that I wondered how long she'd been doing this. How many years had I been believing stories that had no connection to reality? I let her talk. I nodded. I made sympathetic noises. And when she finally wound down, I pulled out my phone. "Michelle, before we talk about the money, I wanted to show you something. Jess sent me the sweetest photos from your party last week." Her face went white. Actually, white, like someone had drained the blood from her cheeks. Her hand, reaching for her water glass, froze mid-air. "What party?" "The one celebrating your promotion. The one with the caterer and the chocolate fountain. The one Emily and I weren't invited to." The transformation was fascinating to watch. The color came back in splotches, red creeping up her neck. Her eyes darted around the restaurant, calculating exits, witnesses, options. She was deciding whether to run or fight. She recovered quickly. I'll give her that. Years of practice. "Oh, that was just a small thing Tom threw together. Last minute. I didn't want to bother you." "With a party?" "You didn't want to bother me with a party, but you'll bother me for $15,000. I kept my voice level, conversational, deadlier than shouting. "It's not like that. Clara, you're twisting things." "Am I?" I pulled out the loan documents, sliding them across the table. "Because these papers you asked me to notarize show that your renovation was fully funded 6 months ago. $75,000 from the bank. So what exactly do you need my money for?" The restaurant noise faded into background static. I watched her face cycle through emotions: shock, anger, fear, calculation. She was deciding which lie to try next, which manipulation would work on her well-trained sister who'd always been so easy to control. "Those documents are private. You had no right." "I had every right. I notarized them. I keep copies of everything I notarize. It's literally my job, Michelle." She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a hiss. The mask was slipping now, the sweet sister routine giving way to something harder, meaner. "You're making a big deal out of nothing. So we had some extra money. So what? Family helps family, Clara. Or doesn't that matter to you anymore?" "You're right," I said quietly. "Family should help family. So why didn't anyone in this family help my daughter feel loved on her 16th birthday?" Direct hit. Her mouth opened, closed. No words came out. For the first time in my memory, Michelle was speechless. "You forgot her, Michelle. All of you forgot her. Then you had the audacity to ask me for $15,000 while posting pictures of your party all over Facebook. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Or did you just not care because you've never cared about anyone but yourself?" I said I was sorry about the birthday. No, you didn't. You said things were crazy. You made an excuse. You never actually apologized. And you know what's funny? In 16 years, I don't think I've ever heard any of you apologize for anything. It's always excuses, explanations, reasons why your behavior isn't actually your fault. People at nearby tables were starting to glance over. Michelle noticed, her face flushing darker. She was used to being the center of attention, but not like this. Not as the villain in someone else's story. "Can you please keep your voice down?" "Why?" Afraid someone might hear the truth. That the perfect Michelle Hartley is actually a liar and a user who treats her own sister like an ATM? She stood up, grabbing her purse with shaking hands. "I don't have to listen to this." "No, you don't. But you also don't get my money. Not now. Not ever." "And Michelle." I stood too, looking her dead in the eye. "Everyone is going to know what you did." She left. Almost ran, actually. Weaving through tables with her head down, leaving her jacket on the back of the chair. The ravioli arrived 2 minutes later. I ate it. All of it. It was delicious. Tasted like freedom. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Because a private confrontation wasn't enough. She'd lied about me to her own daughter. She'd orchestrated my exclusion from family events while smiling to my face. She'd gaslit me for years, making me doubt my own perceptions and feelings. That kind of systematic abuse doesn't get resolved over one lunch. I needed an audience. The annual Hartley family reunion was 6 weeks away, scheduled for the last Saturday in June at my mother's house in Oak Park. Every year, 30 to 40 relatives gathered for a day of forced bonding and passive-aggressive small talk. Every year I showed up early and stayed late, helping set up and clean up while others drifted in and out. Every year I smiled through the subtle digs and obvious favoritism. Not this year. This year, I had a plan. Over the next few weeks, I quietly reached out to other family members. Started with my cousin Rachel, who Michelle had borrowed $5,000 from 3 years ago and never paid back. Then Uncle Robert, who Michelle had accused of being cheap when he wouldn't fund her vacation. Then Aunt Diane, who Michelle had frozen out after a minor disagreement. The thing about toxic people is they leave a trail of wounded behind them. I just had to follow the blood. Meeting Rachel was like looking in a mirror. We sat in her backyard in Lincoln Park, her kids playing on the swing set, and she told me stories that echoed my own so precisely it was eerie. She made me feel crazy, Rachel said, her hands wrapped around a glass of iced tea. Like I was being unreasonable for expecting my money back. She'd say things like, "I thought family didn't keep score," and "I can't believe you're prioritizing money over our relationship." But it wasn't about the money. It was about the lie. What was the lie? I asked, though I could guess. She said she needed it for emergency dental work. Emergency. Her tooth was infected. She might lose it. Insurance wouldn't cover it. I gave her $5,000, Clara. $5,000. And 2 weeks later, I saw photos from her cruise to the Bahamas. When I asked about it, she said Tom had surprised her, that the dental work could wait. She never paid me back, never even acknowledged that she'd lied. Rachel's voice cracked, and I saw tears threatening. This wasn't just about money for her either. It was about trust, about being valued, about the fundamental respect one human being owes another. The worst part, she continued, was how she made me feel guilty for bringing it up. Like I was being petty, materialistic, not understanding enough. She'd say things like, "I'm going through such a hard time right now, and I can't believe you're adding to my stress." She flipped it completely, made herself the victim of my asking for my own money back. I knew that script. I'd heard variations of it my entire life. The way Michelle could take any legitimate grievance and transform it into an attack on her character. The way she weaponized vulnerability, using her tears and stress as shields against accountability. "When did you finally stop asking for it back?" I asked. "About a year ago. I realized she was never going to pay me, and every time I brought it up, she'd freeze me out for weeks. I'd get the silent treatment, wouldn't be invited to family things, would hear through other people that I was causing drama. Eventually, I just stopped, accepted the loss, told myself $5,000 was a small price to pay to see her true character. But it wasn't small, I said quietly. None of this is small. "No," Rachel agreed. "It's not. And it's not just the money. It's the birthday she forgot when my daughter was in the hospital. It's the job interview she promised to help me prepare for, then never showed up for our practice session. It's the 100 small ways she's let me down over the years, always with an excuse. Always with a reason why it wasn't really her fault." We sat in silence for a moment, watching Rachel's kids play. They were so innocent, so unburdened by the weight of adult betrayals. I wondered what Rachel told them about why we didn't see Aunt Michelle as much anymore. "I've been thinking about the reunion," Rachel said finally, "about what you're planning. I want to be there. I want to speak up. But I'm scared, Clara. I'm scared of what it'll do to the family, what people will think of me." "They'll think you're honest," I said. "They'll think you're brave. And anyone who doesn't see it that way isn't worth worrying about." We formed an alliance, unofficial and unspoken at first. Coffee dates where old grievances surfaced like corpses in a thawing lake. Phone calls that started with, "Is it just me?" and ended with, "I thought I was the only one." Uncle Robert's story was different but the same. Michelle had pitched him on a business opportunity that turned out to be a multi-level marketing scheme. When he'd declined, she'd told the family he was selfish and money-obsessed, too cheap to help her succeed. The irony wasn't lost on him. She'd called him cheap for refusing to fund her scam, then asked him to invest even more money. I wasn't alone. I'd never been alone. I'd just been isolated, convinced that my hurt was individual when it was actually collective. Studies show that toxic family members often employ a divide-and-conquer strategy, keeping their victims separated so they can't compare notes. Once we started talking, the pattern became undeniable. Rachel had been told I didn't like her. I'd been told Rachel was jealous of me. Uncle Robert thought I'd called him cheap. Aunt Diane believed I'd sided with Michelle in their fight. All lies, all designed to keep us fractured and powerless. "We should do something," Rachel said during one of our coffee meetings, her hands wrapped around a mug like it was a lifeline. "We will," I promised, "at the reunion." The weeks crawled by. Michelle called twice more, trying different tactics. First, she sent Mom to guilt-trip me. "Your sister is really hurt, Clara. She says you're being unreasonable about a simple loan." I told Mom to ask Michelle about the party and the bank loan. She stopped calling. Then Michelle tried the direct approach, a text saying she was sorry, she'd been stressed, could we please just move past this? I didn't respond. Then David called, my brother who I hadn't heard from in 6 months. "Clara, what's going on with you and Michelle? She says you're spreading lies about her." "Ask her to show you the renovation loan documents," I said. "Then call me back." He didn't call back. The isolation I felt during this period was different from before. Before, I'd been alone in my pain, convinced I was the problem. Now I was alone in my certainty, waiting for vindication. The solitude felt like the held breath before a storm breaks. Emily watched me with concerned eyes. "Mom, are you sure about this? Once you do this, there's no going back." "There's already no going back," I told her. "They made sure of that when they forgot your birthday and asked for $15,000 in the same breath." But late at night, when the house was quiet and I was alone with my thoughts, I wavered. Was I being vindictive? Was I making this worse than it needed to be? Maybe I should just cut them off quietly, let the relationships fade without the drama of confrontation. Then I'd remember Emily's face on her birthday, the way she'd tried to hide her tears, tried to protect me from seeing how much it hurt. And I'd remember that silence had never protected me. Silence had only taught them that they could hurt me without consequences. The night before the reunion, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed watching headlights slide across my ceiling, rehearsing what I would say, how I would stand, where I would position myself for maximum impact. I'd learned from years at the law firm that presentation matters as much as content. You can have all the evidence in the world, but if you deliver it badly, people won't listen. Around 3 a.m, I got up and made tea, sat at the kitchen table with my folder of evidence, going through it one more time. The photos, the loan documents, the timeline of events. Everything was there, irrefutable and damning. But as I sat there in the pre-dawn darkness, I felt something unexpected. Grief. Not for Michelle, not for the relationship we'd never really had. Grief for the sister I'd thought she was. Grief for the family I'd believed in. Grief for the version of myself who'd spent 47 years trying to earn love that was never going to be freely given. I thought about all the times I'd defended Michelle to others. Friends who'd gently suggested she was taking advantage of me. Co-workers who'd raised eyebrows when I'd mentioned lending her money. Even Emily, in her gentle teenage way, questioning why Aunt Michelle only called when she needed something. I'd dismissed them all, made excuses, explained that they didn't understand our family dynamics, that Michelle was going through a hard time, that family meant being there for each other even when it was inconvenient. But I'd been wrong, not about what family should mean. I'd been right about that. I'd been wrong about which people in my life actually embodied those values. The people who'd been showing up for me weren't the ones who shared my blood. They were the Jennifers and the Susans, the neighbors and colleagues who'd noticed when I was struggling and offered kindness without asking for anything in return. Emily found me there at dawn, still in my pajamas, surrounded by papers and regrets. "You're really doing this," she said. Not a question. "I'm really doing this." She sat down across from me, this daughter who'd grown up watching me shrink myself to fit into a family that didn't want me. "I'm proud of you, Mom. Whatever happens today, I'm proud of you." "I'm scared," I admitted. "Not of Michelle exactly, but of what comes after, of who I'll be when I'm not trying to please them anymore." Emily reached across the table and took my hand. "You'll be free, Mom. You'll finally be free." Saturday dawned hot and humid, the kind of Chicago summer day where the air feels like soup. I dressed carefully. Simple navy dress, minimal jewelry, sensible shoes. I wasn't going to a party. I was going to court. I arrived at my mother's house at noon, when the reunion was in full swing. The backyard was full of relatives, kids running through sprinklers, adults clustering around the grill and the coolers of beer. Normal, familiar. A tableau of family unity built on a foundation of lies. Michelle saw me first. Her smile faltered, then fixed itself into place. She'd clearly hoped I wouldn't come, that I'd exile myself and make her life easier. "Clara, you came. I wasn't sure you would." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, my voice pleasant. Empty. I made the rounds, hugged people, accepted compliments on my 7-layer dip that I'd made on autopilot that morning, waited for the right moment. It came at 2:30 when Mom called everyone together for the traditional family photo. We gathered on the back porch, 37 of us, arranging ourselves by height and age. Michelle positioned herself front and center, next to Mom, right where she always was. The golden child, beloved and protected. I stood in the back row, between Rachel and Aunt Diane, flanked by my allies. "Okay," everyone smile. Uncle Tom, Michelle's husband, held up his phone. "Say cheese." "Wait," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter. "Before we take the picture, I have something to say." The backyard went quiet. All eyes turned to me. Michelle's face drained of color. She knew. In that moment, she knew exactly what was coming, and she was powerless to stop it. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," I continued, stepping forward so everyone could see me. "Family is so important. It's about being there for each other, supporting each other through hard times. It's about love and trust and honesty." Michelle was shaking her head slightly, a warning. I ignored her. That's why it hurt so much when my entire family forgot my daughter's 16th birthday 3 months ago. Not a card, not a call, nothing. Emily waited all day, hoping someone would remember. No one did. Uncomfortable shifting. A few people had the grace to look ashamed. My mother's hand went to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears as she realized she'd forgotten her own granddaughter. But what really hurt was when, the very next week, my sister Michelle called to ask me for $15,000. She said she desperately needed it for her kitchen renovation, said the contractor had found structural problems and they were broke. Michelle found her voice. "Clara, this isn't the time." "When is the time, Michelle? When you're asking for money? When you're throwing parties I'm not invited to? When exactly is it appropriate to tell the truth in this family?" I pulled out the loan documents, printed and highlighted. "These are the papers Michelle asked me to notarize 6 months ago. They show that her renovation was fully funded by a $75,000 bank loan. Fully funded. Months ago. She didn't need my money for the renovation. She just wanted it." I pulled out my phone, opened Facebook to the party photos I'd saved. And this is the party she threw the night after asking for money. Catered, open bar, chocolate fountain, a party celebrating her promotion and raise. A party I wasn't invited to. A party where my daughter's cousin asked why we weren't there and was told we were being petty. The silence was absolute. Michelle's face had gone from white to red, tears starting to form. Real or calculated. I didn't know anymore. Didn't care. You're making this into something it's not. You're embarrassing me. I'm embarrassing you? You forgot my daughter's birthday, lied about needing money, excluded us from family events, and I'm embarrassing you by telling the truth? Rachel stepped forward, right on cue. She's not the only one. Michelle borrowed $5,000 from me 3 years ago for emergency dental work and never paid it back. I found out later she used it for a cruise. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. She told everyone I was a cheapskate because I wouldn't fund her business idea. She didn't mention that her business idea was a pyramid scheme that would have cost me $20,000. Aunt Diane's voice shook, but she spoke clearly. She froze me out for 6 months because I couldn't babysit one weekend. Told everyone I was unreliable and selfish. I wasn't invited to her birthday party, to Christmas dinner, to anything. And when I asked why, she said I knew what I'd done. One by one, they spoke up. The wounded Michelle had left behind, finally finding their voices. Cousin Janet talked about being pressured to buy into Michelle's MLM scheme. Uncle Frank mentioned the time Michelle had borrowed his truck and returned it with an empty tank and a dent she never acknowledged. Aunt Carol described being guilted into working Michelle's shift at the family business, then being accused of trying to steal her job. The pattern was undeniable, the evidence overwhelming. 30 years of manipulation, laid bare in front of everyone who'd enabled it. My mother looked shattered, standing between her daughters, realizing that the family unity she'd prioritized had been a mirage all along. "Michelle, is this true?" Michelle was crying now, real tears streaming down her face, her carefully applied mascara running in black tracks down her cheeks. "You don't understand. I didn't mean, it's not like that, you're all ganging up on me." "Then what is it like?" I asked, my voice gentle now. Surgical. "Help me understand how forgetting your niece's birthday while asking for $15,000 makes sense. Help me understand the love and trust you claim to value." She couldn't. There was no explanation that would justify the pattern of lies and manipulation. No excuse that would make sense of treating family like marks in a con game. Tom stepped forward, his hand on Michelle's shoulder. His face was red, whether from anger or embarrassment, I couldn't tell. "I think we should go." They left. Quickly, quietly, Michelle's sobs echoing as they walked through the side gate. Several relatives followed them, either in support or in escape. But most stayed. Most stood there, processing the truth that had been hiding in plain sight for years. My mother sat down heavily on the porch steps. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I thought you were just being difficult, Clara. She said you were always so sensitive, taking things the wrong way." I know what she said. I sat beside her, taking her hand. She's been saying it for years, and I believed it. I thought I was the problem. But gaslight only works if you never turn on the real lights. "I'm sorry." My mother's voice broke. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have listened. I should have paid more attention. I've been a terrible mother." "You've been a manipulated mother," I corrected. "There's a difference. She's very good at what she does. She had all of us fooled." The family photo was never taken. The reunion dissolved into small clusters of people talking in hushed voices, comparing stories, connecting dots. Rachel was crying, hugging Uncle Robert, both of them processing years of believing they were the problem. Aunt Diane sat with my mother, holding her hand while Mom cried decades of regret. I stood there in the center of it all, watching the family I'd known my entire life reassemble itself into something new. Some people looked at me with gratitude, others with confusion, a few with what might have been resentment. Change is uncomfortable, even when it's necessary. My mother approached me slowly, her face aged by tears and revelation. "Clara, I need you to know something. When you were growing up, Michelle was so difficult. Tantrums, manipulation, drama. You were the easy one, the one I didn't have to worry about. And I think..." Her voice broke. I think I took advantage of that. I let you carry the burden of being the stable one, the reliable one, while I catered to her neediness. I taught her that her feelings mattered more than yours. I'm so sorry. It was the apology I'd needed for 47 years. The acknowledgement that I hadn't been crazy, hadn't been too sensitive, hadn't been the problem. I'd been the solution to their problem of managing Michelle. And in making me the solution, they'd made me invisible. Thank you, I said quietly, hugging her. Thank you for seeing it. I should have seen it sooner, she whispered. I should have protected you better, both you and Emily. Jess found me next, her eyes red from crying. I'm sorry, Grandma Clara. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I'm sorry I let her lie about you to me. You were her daughter, I said gently. You believed your mother. That's what children are supposed to do. This isn't your fault, sweetheart. I'm moving out, she said suddenly. I've been saving up. I can't live with her anymore, not now that I see it all so clearly. Would it be okay if I called you sometimes? If we had lunch, just us? I would love that, I said, meaning it. Any time, Jess. Any time. The party was over, but something else had begun. Something that looked like honesty. Over the next few weeks, the fallout was swift and comprehensive. Michelle's reputation in the family imploded. Invitations dried up. Group chats went silent when she joined. People who'd blindly supported her started asking questions, looking at her behavior with newly opened eyes. She tried to salvage it. She posted on Facebook about family betrayal and lies, painting herself as the victim of a coordinated attack. But Rachel, Diane, and Robert posted their own stories, backed with screenshots and receipts. Other people started coming forward with their own experiences. A former co-worker talked about money Michelle had never repaid from a group lunch. A neighbor mentioned a borrowed lawnmower that had never been returned. The court of public opinion is swift and brutal, especially when the evidence is overwhelming. Her friends started to distance themselves. The family friends who'd attended that catered party realized they'd been used as props in her performance of success while she cried poverty to her own sister. Nobody likes being manipulated, even peripherally. Suddenly, invitations to Michelle's gatherings started being declined. Her carefully curated social circle began to shrink. Tom called me once, 3 weeks after the reunion. She's devastated, he said. She's been crying for days. She knows she messed up, Clara. Can't you forgive her? Has she apologized? I asked. A long pause. She says she doesn't know how. Then she's not sorry. She's just sorry she got caught. He hung up. I never heard from him again. Michelle sent one email, 4 weeks after the reunion. I'm sorry you felt hurt. That was never my intention. I hope someday you can forgive me and we can be family again. A non-apology wrapped in victim language. Even in her attempt at reconciliation, she couldn't take responsibility. I'm sorry you felt hurt instead of, I'm sorry I hurt you. The difference matters. One acknowledges my feelings as the problem. The other acknowledges her actions as the problem. I didn't respond. Chapter 9 arrived 6 months after the reunion, wrapped in the golden light of a Chicago autumn. The leaves on my street turned amber and scarlet, a transformation that felt symbolic. I stood in my kitchen watching Emily pack for college, her acceptance to Northwestern still feeling like a miracle. We'd done it, just the two of us, without family money or family support. Mom, she said, folding a sweater with the careful precision I'd taught her, do you regret it? What you did at the reunion? I thought about it, really thought about it, examining the question from all angles like I'd been trained to do at work. No, I said finally. I regret not doing it sooner. Some of the family thinks you were too harsh. Some of the family enabled abuse for decades. I'm not particularly concerned about their opinions on harsh. She smiled at that. Grandma wants to come to my dorm move-in day. Do you want her there? I think so. She's been different lately. More Present. She calls me every week now. The silence from my family had become comfortable rather than painful. Mom called regularly now, careful and contrite, trying to rebuild something neither of us was sure could be fixed. But she was trying, which was more than she'd done in years. David sent a Christmas card, but nothing more. Michelle had disappeared from my life entirely, which felt less like a loss and more like an amputation that allowed healthy tissue to finally heal. But here's what I gained. Rachel and I had lunch every other week now. Real lunches where we talked about real things. Diane invited me to her book club, and I'd discovered a love for mystery novels I never knew I had. Uncle Robert helped Emily move into her dorm. His truck and his time freely given because that's what real family does. I'd lost toxic connections and gained authentic ones. The trade was unquestionably worth it. I'd also gained something else, a meditation group that met Tuesday nights at a community center on Diversey. I'd found them in the aftermath of the reunion, when the adrenaline wore off and the reckoning with years of manipulation left me feeling unmoored. Spirituality had never been my strong suit, but the guided meditations taught me something crucial. I wasn't responsible for other people's bad behavior. I was only responsible for my own choices. And I'd made the right choice. I knew it in the way I could finally look at myself in the mirror without flinching. In the way Emily hugged me a little tighter, proud of a mother who'd finally stood up for her. In the way I slept through the night without anxiety churning in my chest. The legal papers arrived in November, Michelle contesting our mother's will, which she'd recently updated to split everything equally among grandchildren rather than children. Another grasp for money, another attempt to leverage family obligation into financial gain. The audacity was stunning. She was trying to take inheritance money from Emily, from Jess, from all of her nieces and nephews, because she felt entitled to a larger share. I helped Mom find a good estate attorney. I documented every lie, every manipulation, every pattern of financial abuse. The attorney was a woman in her 60s who'd seen it all, and even she was impressed by the extent of Michelle's manipulation. In 30 years of practice, she told my mother, I've rarely seen a pattern this clear. The good news is, it makes our case very strong. The courts aren't kind to people with Michelle's track record. But beyond the legal victories and the social justice, I want to talk about something more important. Something that might help you if you're listening to this and seeing yourself in my story. Financial abuse in families is insidious because it hides behind the language of love. Family helps family becomes a weapon to extract resources without reciprocity. The signs are there if you know how to look. Consistent requests for money paired with displays of wealth, loans that never get repaid, emergencies that always seem to arise when you've just gotten a raise or a windfall. Guilt is the currency, and obligation is the exchange rate. If someone is constantly asking for money but always seems to have money for non-essentials, that's a red flag. If they get angry when you ask about repayment, that's a red flag. If they tell other people you're being selfish or greedy when you set boundaries, that's a massive red flag waving frantically in the wind. Narcissistic family dynamics follow a pattern. They isolate you from outside perspectives, make you doubt your own reality, position themselves as perpetual victims, and punish you for setting boundaries. If your family makes you feel crazy for having feelings, if they rewrite history to make themselves the hero, if they demand support they never reciprocate, you're not imagining it. Trust your gut. The cost of silence in these situations compounds like interest. Every time you excuse the behavior, every time you prioritize peace over truth, you teach them that you're a safe target. You teach yourself that you don't matter. And studies show that the psychological toll of ongoing family manipulation can lead to depression, anxiety, and a host of physical health issues. Speaking up isn't selfish, it's survival. If you're in a situation like mine, here's what I learned. Document everything. Keep receipts, screenshots, loan agreements, texts, emails. When you finally speak up, You'll need evidence because they'll deny, deflect, and gaslight. Build your own support system outside the family. Friends, therapists, support groups. You need people who can validate your reality when your family is trying to rewrite it. Set firm boundaries and enforce them. No is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for protecting yourself. And finally, understand that you can't change them. You can only change your response to them. The hardest part isn't the confrontation. It's the aftermath. When you're standing in the wreckage of what you thought was family, wondering if you did the right thing. Let me save you that uncertainty. If they only loved you when you were useful, that wasn't love. If they only wanted you around when you said yes, that wasn't family. Real love doesn't require you to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. So here I am, 6 months later, in my kitchen in Lakeview. Emily's at college, thriving. She called yesterday to tell me about a study group she'd joined, about friends she was making, about a boy who'd asked her to coffee. Her voice was bright with happiness, free of the weight she'd carried for so long. I've got lunch plans with Rachel tomorrow and meditation tonight. The silence from Michelle doesn't echo anymore. It just exists, neutral and permanent. I think about that champagne glass shattering on her kitchen floor, my dramatic exit from her life. In the movies, that would be the end. But real life keeps going after the big confrontation. You still have to get up the next morning, pay bills, figure out who you are when you're not defined by family dysfunction. I'm still figuring it out, but I'm doing it with my eyes open, my boundaries firm, and my daughter watching me model what self-respect looks like. That's worth more than any false family unity could ever be. Last week, I did something I haven't done in years. I went to dinner with an old friend, Sarah, the one who'd stopped calling 3 years ago. I reached out, apologized for disappearing, and explained what had been happening. She listened, really listened, and then she said something that made me cry. I'm just glad you found your way back to yourself. We're rebuilding that friendship slowly. It's awkward sometimes trying to reconnect after years of distance, but it's honest, and after years of dishonest family relationships, honest feels like coming home. Sarah told me about the years I'd missed, promotions at work, a nephew's wedding, a health scare that turned out to be nothing. I wanted to call you so many times, she said, but I was angry. I felt like I'd been competing with your family for your attention, and I was always going to lose. You weren't competing, I said. You'd already won. I was just too blind to see it. She smiled at that. Well, I'm glad you can see it now. And for what it's worth, what you did at that reunion, that took incredible courage. I don't know if I could have done it. You would have, I said, if you'd been pushed far enough. Everyone has a breaking point. I just finally found mine. We talked about boundaries after that, about how to rebuild a life when you've spent decades defining yourself by other people's needs. Sarah suggested therapy, and I admitted I'd already started. Once a week, Thursday evenings, with a woman named Dr. Patterson who specialized in family trauma. Therapy had been eye-opening in ways I hadn't expected. Dr. Patterson helped me see patterns I'd been blind to, helped me understand that what I'd experienced had a name: financial abuse, emotional manipulation, gaslighting. She validated my reality in ways my family never had. You know what's funny? I told Sarah. For years, Michelle called me too sensitive, said I took everything too personally, made mountains out of molehills, and I believed her. I thought something was wrong with me, that I needed to develop thicker skin. But Dr. Patterson says that sensitivity isn't a weakness. It's actually a strength when you're in healthy relationships. It's only a problem when you're surrounded by people who exploit it. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You're not too sensitive, Clara. You're exactly sensitive enough. The world needs more people who care, not fewer. So tell me, Wherever you are right now listening to this story, what would you have done? Have you been in a situation where family obligation conflicted with self-preservation? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes, knowing we're not alone is the most powerful thing we can have. If this resonated with you, if you felt that metallic taste of betrayal from someone who was supposed to love you, hit that like button. Let me know I'm not alone in this. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We're building a community here of people who refuse to be silent about toxic family dynamics. People who choose truth over comfortable lies. I've got 2 more stories queued up for you, both about family betrayal and the sweet taste of justice. Click on the videos on your screen to keep this conversation going. Until next time, from Chicago with love and hard-won wisdom, take care of your hearts. They're more precious than any family obligation. And remember, blood may be thicker than water, but sometimes water is what keeps you from drowning. This is Clara, signing off. Thank you for listening.